Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Pooja Sharma, CEO of APAAR Health, and today I'm in conversation with Dr. Hetal Shah, the CEO of MeWriT Writing Sciences. So, hi, Hetal. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'll take 2 minutes to give her a small introduction about Dr. Hetal. Hetal has a really impressive resume, and she is a PhD pharmacologist, and she's a subject matter expert, of course, with medical writing for almost 2 decades of hands-on experience in clinical research and medical writing. She's been with Vibgyor, IQVIA, Trilogy Writing, Arcus, CliniSpace, and I name it, and she's participated. Interesting to note that she's actually done versatile roles as a CRC, as a site manager, project manager. And I think a lot of this might have actually helped her in developing herself as a medical writer. She's the founder of MeWriT Healthcare Consulting. This is an independent medical writing and training provider based in Ahmedabad. She's a gold medalist. She's got several publications to her credentials, is a woman entrepreneur in pharma and healthcare, receives several awards, has been in the Hall of Fame of the Indian Society for Clinical Research twice in a row, and she is a lovely person to speak with. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what medical writing is, and I could not think of anyone more than Hetal to share that with. So Hetal, just what is medical writing? I mean, it's something that is it a new field? Is it something that's getting more highlighted now? What is medical writing?
Thanks, Dr. Pooja. And first of all, thank you for inviting me on this platform of APAAR Health. It is always wonderful talking to you. I think medical writing is a term which always invites a lot of curiosity from most of the research professionals in the field. It is not relatively new anymore. Nevertheless, we as a domain are definitely younger than the other domains of clinical research. So, to put it simply, medical writing is a domain, a function within the clinical research or the drug development space. It is a function that deals with developing scientific content, writing documents for a variety of audiences in different formats and for different purposes. So, medical writers are specialized professionals who are not the primary researchers or not the primary doctors, but the ones who help with creating scientific content. Medical writing as a domain, as a function, now exists across various stakeholders of the clinical research industry, right from pharma or biotech companies to clinical research organizations, KPOs, even at regulatory authorities level, in academias, in institutes, at colleges, and also as freelancers. So, in all, medical writing is a function that writes scientific content.
And you speak so beautifully, so coherently as well. So I know that you are a doctor, a PhD. Does every medical writer need to be a PhD?
Okay, so a very common question that we get, especially from student fraternity, how to get started. So first and foremost, you do not need always to be a doctor or a PhD. Nevertheless, a basic requirement definitely is a life science graduate or a postgraduate in pharmacy, medicine, dentist, or any other allied sciences, enough to understand the drug development process, enough to understand medical terminologies, enough to have the ability to, deep dive into various therapeutic areas, understand the drug and the clinical research cycle. So I think that comes in with a basic science background. So right now, when we started off, obviously it was medical and paramedical graduates who would be opted for, but we sometimes now also see people from journalism getting into medical writing. So as far as you have a background in life science, I think you are good to get started.
Okay, awesome. So, what are the different kinds of medical writing? I know because I'm a medical doctor, I see a lot of doctors want to write papers. So, that's one group of medical writing I know. And then there's, of course, the regulatory medical writing. So, what are these two different medical writings, and are they done by different people, or is it the same person who does this writing?
Right. I think again a wonderful question because that helps to understand the domain a little more in depth. Now, when we say medical writing, you have to map it with the drug development spectrum, right from preclinical studies to clinical trials over to approvals and post-approval requirements. And medical writing happens to touch upon all these levels. So, right from preclinical studies, there are requirements for writing animal related protocols or reports from your lab data over to clinical trials where we write protocols, consent forms, study reports, then comes to your drug submission dossiers and to your post approval real time data that our doctors gather. So, medical writing works across the entire spectrum of drug research and development. And hence, based on the requirements and the purpose of the content, it is divided into two major categories. One is the regulatory writing, and two is the scientific or medical communications. So, as the terms say, regulatory writing is primarily meant for the regulators to look at the details under the during the drug development and research program, while the medical communications is the one that deals with publications or giving out your data in the general public domain or writing for the lay people. So basically, there are two categories that we deal with under writing: regulatory and publications.
Awesome. And so I have a lot of students who are studying clinical research, and some of them are, how much understanding do they really need to have of methodology? How important is it that, because yourself, I see that you have a background and you worked as a research operations as well before you went into medical writing. So is it something that you feel is very important for them to actually have done things hands-on? Or is there any specific kind of a person? So like I know an operations person is ideally a person who likes to do things in the field. So what's a medical writer personality type?
Right. I think as a writer, obviously you need the domain knowledge. So back then when we started, we had a luxury of lot of overlapping roles when we used to do, a CRC work, also be a project manager also, and also write the publication or the protocol. So back then, I think I feel that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
But moving forward, we do now have, typical trainings or bifurcations available for people to get directly into writing, or from other roles also you can transit into writing. Nevertheless, the domain knowledge, the clinical trial related domain knowledge is a must. You need to know how the trial works, what is the typical life cycle of a clinical trial, who are the stakeholders like your ethics committee, your patients, your investigators, whose role is what. So that helps you understand the purpose of the documents that you are
That you're
writing,
making.
because what you are writing is being used by them. So if you have that end user's interest in mind, probably it will help you to do your job better. So as a medical writer, the domain knowledge and the drug related development knowledge is a must.
So I remember a time when I, was still a student and I had a mentor, and the mentor used to say, Pooja, the beginning of writing begins with reading. And if you know want to be a good writer, then you have to start reading papers. Is that true? Do you feel that that's a person who would actually write is a person who likes to read?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So if we can come to the core question about the skill sets that
Yeah.
are necessary. So typically there is a required and an acquired set of skill sets that a medical writer would need. So
Mm.
when we say required skill set, obviously your first and foremost is language proficiency and reading capacity in terms of going through so much of literature, analyzing, reanalyzing, and having that patience to look at the computer nowadays and for hours together and figure out a paragraph out of five different
Yeah.
papers.
Yeah.
So your computer skills, your language proficiency, and your literature search skills are mandatory for any person to be a medical writer, because that's not something that we can start afresh when we get into our professional career. That's something we have to come with.
Mm.
So, one more thing is your flair for writing. While you may have all of this, if you do not have a flair for writing, that's again a very difficult skill to develop. I would not say you cannot do it. It can happen eventually over a period of time. But having a flair for writing is something which would primarily attract you to a field like medical writing. So that is again a required skills. Other thing, as a writer, you have to have an eye for detail. That is absolutely necessary. And that's what happened over the period of times. Now that we look at even a single simple flyer or a small content, our eyes go directly on the errors that are there in terms of grammar or punctuation. So an eye for detail is again a must for the writer.
Yeah.
Rest everything else, like your team management, your statistical working knowledge, your attitude towards work, everything is again something which is you will acquire over time and would be necessary to develop yourself as a writer.
Oh, no, I'm glad that you pointed out towards attitude, Hetal, because that's something that I feel, that should definitely, because there will be a lot of students seeing this, we should share as senior people in the career fields that they are wanting to be in. What is the attitude that, you are really looking forward to? What is the attitude? I mean, I remember again my boss once upon a time saying that I can make out a person when he comes in, walking in for the interview, what his attitude is. So, what is it that your tips for what is the right attitude towards any
I
career? I
think,
mean, of course, medical
yeah,
writing, your
I think,
expertise.
sure. Yeah, I think for anyone who is starting, for starters, it's important to have your focus clear. What's in it for me, And when I started off, I will speak for my own example. The purpose was always to learn more,
Mm,
to gain more, to know more. Because when you're starting with a empty plate. So rather than focusing on the distance objectives like what are my career paths, what are my financial remunerations, what location I'm working with, whom I'm working with, I think most important is what is your exposure that
mm,
you are gaining. And it can come from any small or big platform. So I think that should be someone's focus if you're starting afresh.
mm. So I agree. I think it's the same thing that, what are you actually learning and what are you gaining from that experience is very, very critical. But still, as a medical writer to be, as a few of them might be aspirational writers who are listening to this. So, because suppose somebody is taken on a clinical research as a field or is a pharmacy student and believes that, I don't want to travel so much, maybe medical writing is the career for me to take. So, how do you believe what is a normal career path for a person who's a young medical writer? And two, what really are the skills that a person should try to acquire during this journey? Because as you look back, it seems easier, but when you're there in that hot spot, it's not so easy to understand.
Right. Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think it makes sense. And now, back then, when we started, we did not have all these options. Like, again, if I
Yeah.
speak for myself, I went on to doing independent work, being self employed, and then putting up merit only because I'm based at Ahmedabad. And back in 2003 and 2005, medical writing was just a buzzword, and
Mm,
getting into a pharma or a CRO at a position in medical writing was not possible for me. And I have always been till now so passionate about medical writing that I just moved out from my ongoing job at the CRO and then started afresh on my own. So back then this was the situation. Now we have a wonderful career line for all medical writers, and medical writing has now developed as a
yeah.
full-fledged domain, as I said. So the career looks great. Again, the starting points or the skill sets are the same that we spoke of. So unless you have a flair for writing, unless you have those excellent computer skills, and unless you have the right attitude to look at so much of details and you're happy looking at scientific content, probably you should not look for writing as a career if these are not your elements. If these are your elements, then the other things you can consider, like you have remote positions or you can work from home, you won't need to travel. Those are all secondary objectives. I think primarily is you should be enjoying to read and write. If that is
Mm,
met, I think things are looking better. Career wise, as I said, there are wonderful options in biotech, pharma companies, or clinical research organizations, or even being self employed. So it keeps growing as you grow. So I think the best thing to do is to get started at a writing position in any good platform that you get, and over a period of time acquire these skills, including your soft skills as well as your technical skills. Develop about writing different variety of documents across the medical writing space, and that's how you will gain more experience and skills, and then you can probably choose if you want to specialize in a particular domain or not.
yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. So, what really inspires Dr. Hetal Shah and what really makes merit go round? So that's something I would like to hear, because so many years of writing, and if I'm writing a paper, I know my name will be on it, I will be referenced, I will be cited. There will be people asking me for publication copies, whatever. So there's an excitement as a clinician to share my research. But as a medical writer, what is it that drives you?
So at MeWriT, again, I deal with the entire spectrum, right from regulatory documentation to scientific publication. And at MeWriT, our USP is quality and timeline, and we have
Ah,
not faltered on it till now. Having said that, every morning I am motivated enough to write some piece of work or science. So that's a personal motivation for me to keep going. Writing regulatory documents, particularly highly technical content, and putting it down in a way which is easier for readers to understand, or accomplishing a task at the end of the day is what keeps me going, I think, and everybody at MeWriT. So we do not really have more of what do we say, non-functional roles. In fact, we encourage people to continue developing your skills, keep writing at whatever level you are, whether you are a principal medical writer, or even if you are for instance, myself, I'm being the director of the company, I still will do first hand writing for complex
yeah.
documents, and
Oh,
that's what keeps me going, I guess.
that's actually impressive, Hetal. So my last question to you really is that, does Hetal blog? Do you have a blog?
I would love to do that someday, honestly, but thankfully our hands are really very full, and we are a niche provider. And as I said, our focus is always quality on what we deliver. So I hope to do that sometimes, but our social media handles, especially LinkedIn, are very active.
Okay.
Again, as Merit's portfolio, we are very active in training. So I personally have trained over 2,000 professionals, including students, till now over the past decade and a half now. And we continue doing a lot of training and educational programs.
Yeah.
The sole purpose is to give it back to the society from where we
Wonderful.
have learned. So I think that is a replacement for blogs right now, wherein we
Yeah.
share what we actually do.
No, so I think that is an excellent point to stop with. That students know that there's an opportunity to write to you, to connect with you, and you will be open to mentoring them if you see there is potential. That is wonderful for, I'm
Absolutely.
sure, all our students to know and our doctors to know as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Hetal. That was a pleasure. And I look forward to actually inviting you once, this, APAAR starts its activities with a in-person activities. So we hope to invite you for one of our events as well. So thank you so much,
Thank you,
Dr. Hetal,
Pooja.
for joining us.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure connecting with you. Thanks.
Thank you.